Okay, now we're going to move on to what would be the full welt pocket. We did the welt opening, simple welt that's called. Now we're going to construct the entire thing with the pocket bag attached. So to do that, we're working with the same first pieces. This is the pocket bag that we're doing in addition to that. Notice that it has the same punch holes as your pant, and that here we have attached a piece of the actual fabric that will show through the slit on the finished pant so that you don't see the lining. So notice that there's notches here. This should be top stitched to that spot. It's skinnier because we're going to do a French seam here, so you don't want it all caught up in the seam for bulk. So we've overlocked the bottom of that and top stitched it, matching the notches. That's the bottom. We've also prepared our dart. Remember, it goes 1/2 inch past the punch hole, and on the back, the wrong side of the fabric, we've done our strip of fusing. That will stabilize because we have to cut. So we got to do the proper stacking order. So refer to your handout, look at the color coding. This helps you stack it properly so that you don't end up with things on the wrong side. This indicates right side. That's what we're looking at here is our right side, which means the finished dart side. We're going to put our welt face down again, matching those holes. Remember, on your actual fabric, you would never use Sharpie like this. This is only for demo purposes. You would use chalk or a thread tracing or something that would not be so obvious and permanent. Match those with the skinnier side of the welt on top. Just going to secure that with 1 pin. Note how the pocket bag, now we're looking at the wrong side of the pants, so we're going to fold it over. Wrong side of the pants. You see the pocket bag and you see this little square of fabric that you've sewn on. So we're going to place this. Obviously ours is longer than this little image, but I'm sure you can figure it out. Match your punch holes here. Okay, see the right side of the little piece of fabric. You can see underneath your fuse, that's the red peeking out here. And you know on your front, you have the whole welt piece that's face down to the pant itself. So I'm going to flip back over to the face. I want to make sure all of these punch holes are lined up. And then I'm going to secure it. I've already drawn the line on from punch hole to punch hole on this. I use pen, don't use pen, use chalk or appropriate marking methods on actual fabric. We're going to sew this like we did our simple welt, no back stitching because it becomes our cut line. Now we have to create the rest of the welt box. So we're going to take our ruler and our marking utensil. And I'm going to draw 1/4 inch on top and 1/4 inch past the punch hole. So I'm going to make a little end point for myself. There and there. Do the same on the bottom. There and there. So these are the next lines we're going to stitch. Remember, these are stability lines, so we do have to back stitch at the beginning and at the end of both lines. Make sure you clip as you go because all these threads can get very messy. It's worse when you're using contrast thread like this. Obviously you would use matching thread for your own project. Okay, so now we have the stitch lines ready to go. Before we clip anything, we want to get our welts prepared. Remember that these are going to be the little folds that go down inside. They're 1/4 inch above your stitch line, so we're going to fold down 1/4, which if you notice brings you back almost to that line, and fold up 1/4, which will bring you back almost to this point. And go to the iron, press those in. Having these secured in place makes it much easier when you flip it. Having the interfacing on it keeps your folds much more secure. Okay, so I've prepared the pressing. Now I want to do my clipping. So we're going to start by cutting that line all the way through all fabrics. It has to be totally straight. So first we're going to fold this, match up those lines so we're sure we're not cutting at an angle. And then we want to take the scissor and just cut down on our stitch line in the center. We want to open it up, continue that cut to the end of the line where your punch hole is. Other side too. We keep this nice and clean. Okay, now we've created our opening. Remember, these two welts are in separate pieces, so now we're going to cut just the welt. So I'm putting my scissor in between the welt and the pant, cutting to the punch hole again so that this piece is now completely separate from the pant. Same on the other side. Okay, separate from the pant. To be able to turn this, we have to open up the corners. We don't want to cut through the welt to open up the corners though, so we are going to need to kind of roll that away. Scissors go back in from the punch hole up to the stitch line at an angle. Don't cut through it, but cut as close as possible. Okay, so 4 corners, 4 clips. Okay, now we're ready to roll it to the inside. And flip it over to get the fabric out smoothly. Okay, so you have your press line, so you know that this is going to fold here, but watch these seam allowance. They have a tendency to want to go into the opening. You got to make sure they stay folded back. You can press that here too, but finger press is good enough while you're sewing. Then you're going to fold it over on your pressed crease line. Same on the top. I'm going to press this up so that the seam allowance is not going into your opening. Fold that back. We want to have these welts meeting in our space without having one bigger than the other or without having them overlapping. So you have to pay close attention, follow your press lines to get them to meet up. Depending on the thickness of your fabric, sometimes this is super easy and sometimes it's not. Okay, my stripe here helps me see that I've got the top and the bottom lined up. Now I just want to make sure that they meet in the space. So once I have that lined up, I'm going to move both the pant and the pocket lining out of the way till I see that little triangle from the clipping, and I see both my top and my bottom welt. Now I want to sew in that space, right in the crease of that triangle, close to the pant as possible without stitching through it. What I mean by stitching through it is, you see how this makes a fold? Sometimes you can catch that and then you'll end up with a pucker. So you want to be beside it. Like that. So that's what you're going for, where you have them meet and you have the same amount at the top and at the bottom. So once we accomplish one side, and again make sure these seam allowances are staying down, that they haven't rolled into your opening. If this little piece pops out, it just easily pushes back in. So we're going to push that back in. We're going to arrange our top and bottom welts to meet in the opening. If you want to do this at the ironing board too, you can. It's very important to take a little time on this step to make it perfect, because this is the most visual aspect of the pocket. Okay, once I get that in the right place, I'm going to come back again, fold the pocket and the pant out of the way. Didn't follow my own advice and clip my threads, now you see a problem. Sew into the little ditch of the triangle, like that. So I should have an even welt on both sides, have the same amount of space filled here. It should be that 1/4 inch on the top and a 1/4 inch on the bottom. I'm just going to give that a quick press so it stays in place and the seam allowance does not roll where it's not supposed to go. Okay, so it looks the same as our simple welt. How this is going to be different is this pocket is actually going to fold here and come back up to meet the top, and then that's your opening there. So you see the fabric behind it, and then you'll have the entire pocket bag. So now we're ready to close this up. So this gets closed with a French seam so that on the inside of the pant you don't see the raw edges. You want it to finish up this way. So to do that, we're going to start by folding our pant. Obviously this is a lot easier on the sample than it is with an entire pant, but the method is the same. Folding our pant across and then starting the French seam this way. Before we do that though, want you to note that these welts right now are unattached, meaning they could still roll to the top or to the bottom. The top one we want to attach with the pocket bag so that the hand can't slide up, but this bottom piece we want to secure now. So before all the layers are sewn together, we're going to come to the back. What we're going to sew together is just this edge to this edge. So let's fold that. Actually, probably easier from the front. We're going to fold this out of the way. We're going to find this little ditch here at the bottom. We want to sew that across. Okay, so now that's nice and closed. We also want to keep this flap secured to the pocket lining. So we're going to go ahead and attach that. Okay, so now this welt is secured in place. It's not going to roll. So now we're going to move on to that French seam, and remember we'll close this top with the pocket. So we want to roll the pant, kind of stuff it inside the pocket basically. We're going to start with it wrong side to wrong side. So if we see our fabric on the face up, that means we're doing it correctly, because this will end up on the inside. So we want to match those edges. You have notches on the side here that should match. Top should match. Make sure you're not catching any of that pant piece inside of this. Doing this just at a 1/4 inch seam. You see now why this piece is smaller, so it's not going to get caught in the first part of the French seam, because all that would do is add bulk. So it's like sewing it on and trimming away, except we have it kind of pre-trimmed. I'm still checking to make sure my pant itself isn't getting in the way of my stitching. Always have to check yourself when you're sewing. Even if you know you're doing the steps right, it doesn't mean that something else isn't happening that you're not paying attention to. Okay, so now I'm going to roll this, unstuff my pant. Okay, starting to make a little more sense now. So now you have a pocket where you can stick your hand in. You have a pocket bag. This is still untethered, so now we're going to kind of close things up. I want to poke in here, get my corners out. Okay, to finish the French seam, I'm going to do this, but first we're going to close that top welt so that the hand can't go all the way up. We only want to close the pocket bag to the welt piece though. So we're not going to top stitch through the pant. You don't see any stitching here. So from the face, I'm going to get this out of the way. I'm going to push it back pretty firmly so that I can really get into the stitch nicely, so that will keep that welt nailed in place. So once I feel like I've gotten that position, I'm just going to go all the way to the end. Take it all the way across. Nice and tight in there. So now see, that won't go up. Keeps the pant firm. You can see now why this is overlocked, because that part does kind of show, or at the very least the hand is going in and out and it can start to fray. Now we can finish our French seam. So we're going to fold the pant out of the way again. Clean up my little messes. And now do our 1/4 inch French seam. This also stabilizes the pocket. Pocket lining fabrics tend to be a lightweight cotton in most tailored garments, and they can start to tear. You want them lightweight so that you don't see a lot of bulk underneath, but they can get fragile. So by doing the French seam this way, you've reinforced the seam as well as keeping it clean and flat. So from the back of the pocket, you'll see these 3 top stitches. You'll see your French seam. From the front of the pocket, you'll see that this is closed here, and then you'll make sure it's fully functional, which it is. And then to finish, we have excess here of the pocket bag. We you're just going to do a stay stitch at about 1/4 inch here. You have a 1/2 inch seam allowance for your waistband, so 1/4 inch should be fine. Stay stitch those two together. Then we can go trim this off evenly. And then we have a completed welt pocket.